continuous introduction. Okay, so so then it will be about the Russian space program and how it intertwined with the life of my family and myself. But the theme of this week is migration, so in 3 points in my presentation I will say something relevant to that. So please watch out for that and make notes on your paper about that. Russian culture. So when you think of culture, some people think about folk culture like Russian food, traditional dance, the folk arts like matryoshkas or balalaikas, or also Russian dances. And I chose not to speak about that. And some people think about the high culture as the Russian literature, Leo Tolstoy, music, Peter Tchaikovsky, Dmitry Mendeleev, the author of the periodic table of elements, or the stunning Russian art. And I choose not to speak about that as well. Instead, I will claim that the main contribution of Russia into the human culture is the exploration of space. And we will talk in detail more about these images corresponding to milestones. So first of all, Sputnik. Just 12 years after a devastating war, which killed 26 million Russians and half of the industry, Russia upstages the United States in launching the first satellite, the first artificial body on the orbit. So that is done in main part due to the vision and drive of several people, mainly Sergei Korolev, the head of the Russian space program, Kurchatov, head of the nuclear program, and Mstislav Keldysh, the mathematician for the space and science. So that the flight of Sputnik and the radio signal inspired people all over the world who walked out, who looked at the Sputnik with telescope, listened to it on the radio. It was also a major shock for the US defense system that caused major reevaluation of education and massive investment in science and technology, which further led on to the Apollo program and the man on the moon. So in the meantime, my parents joined the space program. They come from small towns in Siberia and Turkmenistan, correspondingly, go to study in the city of Moscow, really the center of science, and then come to Zhukovsky, the center of aviation. Other important locations for the stop will be Star City, where the training of cosmonauts is happening, and Korolev, the town which was built and then named after the leader of the space program, where all the designs of rockets and spaceships is going on. So they meet, they work in the city, and then they meet each other. So about our city, it's the center of Soviet aviation. It has the biggest airfield in Europe, seen here on Google Maps. And it's named after Nikolai Zhukovsky, the founder of aerodynamics in the early 20th century, and the teacher of many of the Russian air and space engineers. So then the next major achievement was the first flight of a person in space, Yuri Gagarin. So here you see the video of preparation for the takeoff and the takeoff. So then here Yuri Gagarin is pictured with Sergei Korolev, the founder of the leader of the program. And that too was a very risky move, because nobody knew how the humans would react to weightlessness, to space, whether there were very few successful launches before that. So then again, nobody knew whether it wouldn't malfunction. So of course Yuri Gagarin ran an incredible risk of flying. But so he willingly took this risk, and everything turned out well in the end. So before his flight, Gagarin was training in our town of Zhukovsky, using the simulator that my father created. Well, he was one of the creators, let's say, of that simulator. So here you see the Russian spaceship Vostok is launching for the first time. During the launch, Gagarin coined the iconic expression "Поехали," which means "up we go," which ushered the space era for the humanity. So then there it flies. Gagarin could have been just an ordinary person with a quiet demeanor. Instead, he was the very charming and charismatic person, at the same time humble and down to earth, very relatable. So the whole country instantly fell in love with him. He went on a tour of many countries where he met dignitaries and common people, and made strides in projecting a very positive and cool image for the Soviet Union all over the world. So everybody wanted to go to space like the Soviets. He could have taken the rest of his life off. Instead, he trained for further flights, and he continued being the test pilot. That's what he started. And he tragically died during the tests of one of the fighter planes at only the age of 34. So here you see the unique photo of Gagarin before he was famous, before the flight, training in our town of Zhukovsky. And here you see the simulator built by my father. It's actually installed here in Star City Training Center. And you will hear more directly from my father about that. The third milestone that I want to mention is the first spacewalk, done in '65 by Alexei Leonov. So then that's getting out of the plane in order to fix something around it. And again, nobody knew whether the cosmic radiation wouldn't kill you when you get out of the capsule of the spaceship. He ran this risk, it went well. Inspired by the stunning views of space, he goes on to create the art, shows the humans traveling to other planets and stars with incredible views that he imagined. He later became the deputy director of the Star City responsible for training of the astronauts, and became the good friend of my father. So now, what is my mother doing in the meantime? She's designing an antenna to communicate between the airplane and the Earth, but more importantly between the airplane and the satellite. So then you could coordinate their motion. She could have just designed it and let professionals test it. Instead, she gets on the plane while it flies and tests the equipment personally. To accomplish it better, she goes above and beyond, and to some extent risks her life. So this is an example of one of the tests that she took part in. This is the Tupolev 144, the first passenger supersonic airliner. It was done before Concorde and before the US model of that. So how many of you have flown the supersonic airliner? Unsurprisingly, because it flew for some years in 1970s and 80s, but then it lost the competition to subsonic airliners. So in the end, they were bringing more profit to their owners than something better. So that's you used to hear about progress, things becoming better, more exciting as the time goes. This is an example of regress, that some things which were done before are no longer available now. Same thing with the man on the moon. It was possible to put a person on the moon in 1970, but now, if you try, nobody would do that for you. Another example of regress. So then this passenger airliner is less dangerous to test, but fighters and bomber planes are much more dangerous because new principles are used in designing them. And while doing that, test pilots run incredible risks and sometimes sacrifice their lives. So here you see just a few of the heroes of our town who gave their life for that. And my mother was saying that it's an eerie feeling that when the street in our city is named after one of these fallen test pilots, and she worked with him, she flew with him, so she actually knew that person. So then I'm born, pictured here with my parents. As I'm growing up, there are lots of old planes stationed in the parks of our town, and I get to climb to some of them. And at this age, lots of kids in my town want to be test pilots. Since my father navigates the spaceships by the star maps, he also teaches me the constellations with the help of this book. And at the age of 5, I swear I knew all these constellations. And of course I forgot them by now because I'm not using it anymore. The secret. There is always snow on the ground in my town. Oh, no, just kidding. I just selected the images with the snow because I think they are more stunning. But it does get cold sometimes in winter in Russia. And Russians have a strange habit of hanging the rugs on the wall, as pictured here. That makes it a more warm and cozy feeling in their apartments. So then what's happening? Next is that the joint flight of the American ship Apollo and the Soviet ship Soyuz together in 1975. Before that, nobody could imagine that would happen during the Cold War, but in the 1970s there was an easing of the Cold War, and President Nixon and Brezhnev signed an agreement which made that possible. So the two ships flew to the orbit, met there, docked, and the cosmonauts and astronauts could go back and forth between the ships, try them, fly them, and so forth. And where my father comes in, he builds the simulator for training these crews. And at this moment, let me cue in my father. Please welcome.
I'm Evgeny Nikonov. I can claim that I am a teacher of all Russian cosmonauts. In 1961, I was lucky to join the group engineers who created first simulator of spaceship Vostok for Yuri Gagarin. Yuri Gagarin was my good friend. I met and worked with chief designer of space, Sergei Korolev. Space simulator or flight simulator is a big complex of devices, including replica of spaceship, the outer window environment visual generating system around spaceship replica, mock-up spaceship, many onboard systems simulator, and instructor's console, another room. Yeah. Simulator is used for training cosmonauts, and it's very important. Used for as exam tool for choose best crew for space flight. It's very important role of simulator. Before I joined this group engineers, I saw they not so seriously simulate movement of spaceship. I said it's not good. I had a good knowledge of math and mechanics, and I created my own mathematical, mechanical code of modeling. Suppose cosmonaut in the center, around moves Earth in size according current altitude. Around him moving sun as well as the moon, another spacecraft and stars. I invented equation, my name, Nikon's equation, and it was my dissertation and my invention. All the day long, the simulator was busy, cosmonaut trained. At night, I let my colleagues go home. I switched on all devices of simulator and realized my own space flight. I detected all software and hardware bugs and gaps. I think who is how to say, eliminate, and next day all malfunction were eliminated. I created this simulator for joint Russian-American mission, space mission, Apollo Soyuz. I met Colonel Stafford, now he's general. He trained in this simulator. He was my good friend. He very liked this simulator. He said it's very precise, comfortable, and good designed. Then I created simulator for manned orbital space stations. And I was lucky, by the way, to meet American astronaut Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. He visited my simulator, and I give him a question. I know, Mr. Armstrong, you landed on the moon early lunar morning. It was very, very cold this time. I think maybe surface of moon is slippery. It's dangerous to fall. He liked my question and smiling said, yes, it's very dangerous to fall, but we had good shoes, boots, and surface was a little crust and sand, and we cannot meet slippery stones. It's all right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on. How is the space race shaping up so far? So the first space flight, first man and woman in space, first spacewalk, first to the moon, first to Venus, first to Mars, go to the Soviet Union. We have a few very important achievements. First docking by Neil Armstrong, first person on the moon, Neil Armstrong, and first reusable spaceship, space shuttle. We will return to that very important achievement later. In the meantime, I'm growing up, going to school, and joining the Young Pioneer organization, shown by these red scarves. The Pioneer organization structures all after-school activities, recycles very early in history, and more importantly, runs the clubs of young technologists, where the kids can build and test model airplanes and model rockets. So at this age, a lot of kids in my town want to be aerospace scientists and engineers. And so did I. Another thing that really shapes my future career are the air shows, which are privately held only for citizens of our town in this Flight Research Center, where I can see the airplanes on the ground, starting off high in the sky, get to climb into them. So here I'm pictured among the crowd of test pilots and airspace designers. And so the things that you could see here in the sky were really incredible. The airplanes developed to the amazing degree, and some of the brave test pilots created their own air maneuvers.
Впервые МиГ-29 был продемонстрирован на авиасалоне Фарнбург в 1988 году. В его полетную программу была включена уникальная фигура колокола, скольжение на хвост. Это не просто эффектный маневр. Когда боец срабатывает сигнал об обнаружении самолета локатором, летчик переходит вертикальный набор высоты, а затем самолет скользит хвостом вниз.
At that moment, all radars lose the airplane because it's not moving.
Сигнал от нее теряется.
And then it plunges almost vertically down, and then again gets away from the detection.
МиГ-29 – один из лучших истребителей в мире. Серийное производство.
As the airplanes develop, now it's Sukhoi 27, Viktor Pugachev creates another maneuver called Pugachev's Cobra in '89. And in doing that, the airplane flies horizontally, not vertically, and then instantly stops in the mid-air and almost flips over. So what happens is the attacker, which was on the tail of that airplane, now rushes forward, and you are now behind the attacker in the full control of his fate. So very useful military maneuver. Other things that excite the young people at that time is the science fiction. Here you see the screenshots from the 1957 movie called Andromeda Nebula, and where the humans travel to other planets and other stars in the galaxy. And the main hero of that movie is named Dar Veter, which in Russian means the gift of wind. He is the positive character, as shown by his bright colored clothes, unlike Darth Vader, who is dressed in black. So the color code works. Another formative movie was called Moscow Cassiopeia, where the group of middle school students are formed into a crew and sent to a distant star so that they are grown up by the time they need to explore this star. And it was a very important message for us that even a nerd can become the leader of the space crew and design the spaceship, and a pretty girl would like him. In the meantime, my father goes on developing the space simulators. Now they are based on more modern computers. And here you see the view of the instructor's console. They see what's happening with the cosmonaut in the capsule, and they see everything the cosmonaut does to the spaceship. So you remember I mentioned that the United States were ahead in the space shuttle program. Soviet Union couldn't let it go, and they are launching their own space shuttle called Buran, designed by Gleb Razino-Lozinsky. And the difference between the Soviet space shuttle and the American space shuttle: the American space shuttle can only fall from space and glide, the Soviet space shuttle could take off from the ground and fly and land. It was still launched into space on a rocket, but the advantage of that, first of all, that during landing it could maneuver, it could make a circle for the better approach to the landing strip, and also it was much easier to test it. You could test it off the ground, fly in it, and it was very difficult to fly. So the space shuttle needs to fly from almost zero speed to space speeds of 24 Mach. So then it's very awkward and bulky. And amazing test pilots from our city, like Igor Volk, pictured here, could actually fly this plane, which we called iron, like for ironing clothes. So here you see it's coming back and landing, accompanied by a fighter plane. So all the kind of private footage from the Flight Research Center in my town. And I'm growing up, graduating from high school, going to the university, then going to work in the Central Aerodynamic Institute, seeing the wind tunnel. Before that, when I was a child, I could only hear the roar of the wind tunnel. Now I could actually see what was roaring all this time. I'm working on the space shuttle, on the entry in the atmosphere when the air becomes plasma and glows. So there is all this, electricity and light emitted from that. It's a very interesting topic to research. Unfortunately, just a year before I get my master's degree, the Soviet Union is dismantled by greedy politicians. They cancel a lot of the science programs because these programs don't help them enrich themselves. And so then I'm practically losing my employment. So to get some better prospects, I'm moving to the United States. So I'm a migrant worker here in this country. And that's how, after many years, I'm ending up here in Beaverton. My father perseveres. He stays in Russia and works on the space stations. To give you a background, the Soviet Union had a continuous run of space stations starting in 1971, and the United States were not as successful in that. In '98, both Russia and the United States joined in the program of the International Space Station. So see how the space station is getting bigger and bigger, more complex. And what my father does is he takes part in this program and creates the control console for the space station, from which you can navigate it, fire the engines, turn on and off systems, control all that. And for that achievement he gets the unique Medal of Keldysh from the Russian government for the achievements in the space exploration. Very few people got that. Okay. Now, in summary, let's ask ourselves, how important was that program for us? Is it just an ancient history that nobody cares about? To answer that, it's important to ask yourself a question. How do you get to space? So depends on the year. In 69 to 75, you can either buy your ticket on Soyuz or you can take the Apollo line to fly to space. Then, in a few years, it's just Soyuz. There is no American option. NASA works hard to build the space shuttle, and then for 30 years, there is shuttle bringing people up in space. But starting 2012, there is nothing. I forgot to put the Chinese space program here, which puts people on the orbit. There is the private companies like SpaceX, but they haven't still put a person in space as far as I know. So what I would throw as a challenge to you, the younger generation, is to fill in this American column on the slide, to provide an option for people to go to space, to go to the moon, other planets. So I think that would be a very noble cause. With that, I conclude. Thank you very much.